Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. Influence by Robert Cialdini. What makes someone agree? Which compliance methods work best? Mindless compliance is increasing due to rapid change in life's complexity. Dr. Robert Cialdini studies compliance and influence, the psychology of persuasion. 7 Influence Principles. Dr. Robert Cialdini studied compliance professionals like marketers, salespeople, and recruiters for 3 years. He wanted to see how these compliance or influence concepts are used. 1. Reciprocation requires that one person try to repay what another has provided. 2. Liking people prefer to say yes to folks they like. 3. Social proof people base their beliefs and actions on what others are doing. 4. Authority the power to order, decide, and compel. 5. Scarcity people attribute more value to chances that are less available. 6. Commitment and consistency a desire in most people to be and look consistent within their words, ideas, attitudes, and deeds. 7. Unity sharing identities with others helps people define themselves and their groups. Dr. Robert Cialdini builds influence, the psychology of persuasion around which principles can help persuaders achieve these 3 goals. Reciprocation, liking, and unity. Social proof and authority reduce uncertainty. Consistency and scarcity motivate. Chapter 1 Levers of Influence, Power, Trade Tools. Identified regular, mindless, mechanical patterns of action. Fixed action patterns, automatic behavior patterns are usually triggered by one aspect of the relevant information. These habits repeat in the same order. A trigger activated these patterns, the study found. Trigger feature, the feature that lets one choose the right action without analyzing all the relevant facts. Mind tricks. Mechanical response to a predetermined trigger saves time, energy, and personal resources. Psychologists have found shortcuts in humans. Judgmental heuristics, mental shortcuts we use in everyday decisions. Automated answers can make dumb and expensive blunders. Mistakes multiply when others try to profit from them. Conformity. In Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, Dr. Robert Cialdini claims that knowing these patterns and triggers lets you leverage the compliance process to your advantage. Compliance process, wherein one individual is spurred to comply with another's request. Each compliance trigger can be utilized to persuade people to comply. Because it is unrecognizable, the contrast principle is often utilized to influence. Perpetual contrast, the tendency to regard 2 things that are different from one another as being more different than they actually are. Chapter 2 Reciprocation, the old give and take. One of the most ubiquitous and basic principles of human civilization is embodied in the rule of reciprocation, Dr. Robert Cialdini writes in Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. Reciprocation requires that one person endeavor to repay what another has provided. This rule requires the beneficiary to pay back. It lets one provide with confidence. Thus, society teaches us to obey or suffer social penalties from birth. Reciprocity fosters confidence in society and humanity, making partnerships, transactions, and bartering win-win. Reciprocation. Compliance practitioners use the reciprocation rule to get individuals to conform, especially for profit. They give gifts before asking for favors. 3 rules make this technique effective. 1. Extreme power. The rule can force someone to agree to a normally rejected request. Personalizing a gift, favor, or service enhances the practice. 2. Enforces uninvited debts. The rule might force one to do unasked favors, making the recipient feel awkwardly beholden. Thus, one has no alternative except to return the obligation. 3. Causes unequal exchanges. The regulation should encourage equal partner exchanges. However, a tiny favor might build a sense of obligation that leads to a much larger favor. Exchanges. Get reciprocal concessions. Reciprocal concessions are when one concession leads to another. This negotiation tactic uses reciprocal concessions. Rejection then retreat technique, starting with an extreme request, which will be denied, then scaling down to a more acceptable request that is more desirable and profitable to the recipient. As a concession, the reasonable request would likely be accepted. Research reveals that this method is more likely to get one to agree, follow through, and accept future requests. Reciprocal concessions make people feel better. They dictated the final accord, and satisfaction because the requester conceded. Defense. Avoid repeatedly rejecting first favors. Accept the initial offer and frame it as a trick to avoid reciprocation. Reframing will eliminate the need to reciprocate. Chapter 3, Liking, the Friendly Thief. In Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, Dr. Robert Cialdini shows that people we like influence us. Someone like to say yes to people they like. Business relies on the like rule since enjoying something makes you more inclined to buy it. Thus, compliance professionals intentionally increase likability to promote effectiveness. Liking, 5 factors. 1. Physical attractiveness. People know being attractive is socially desirable, but they underestimate the benefit. This creates a halo effect, making us link them with honesty, friendliness, and intelligence. Thus, attractive people are more persuasive and can influence others. 2. Similarity. We like people who are like ourselves in opinions, personality traits, background, or lifestyle. Compliance professionals want us to like them by manipulating their appearance, opinions, and interests. Thus, we tend to comply without thinking. 3. Compliments. They'll like you and comply with your desires. 2 useful yet unappreciated compliments are behind a deserving individual. Those meant to motivate the recipient to follow through. 4. Interaction and cooperation. We enjoy things familiar to us, especially when contact is positive. Cooperation fosters mutually beneficial contact through common goals. 5. Conditioning and association. Compliance professionals use associations to create positive impressions of themselves, their company, and their products. However, spectators may unfairly link persons with bad events. Conscious people avoid bad situations. Defense. To avoid compliance, you need a broad strategy. Thus, be mindful of your biases toward compliance specialists. Mentally separate your liking for the requester from their offer. Based on the request's merit, comply. Chapter 4, Social Proof, Truths Are Us. Dieting, crime, online purchasing, and other actions all include showing support for an idea, good, or action. In Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, Dr. Robert Cialdini introduces the following lever, which is useful for compliance. Social proof. People base their beliefs and actions on what others are doing. Compliance professionals employ social proof by requesting and showing popularity. When they show that many others, the more, the better, are complying with the request, more others obey, increasing its popularity. Social proof ideal conditions. Social proof works best under 3 conditions. 1. Uncertainty. People tend to follow others and agree with their behavior in uncertain situations. We may forget that others are examining social evidence as we resolve uncertainty. 2. The many. In a group, one's likelihood to conduct an activity is proportional to the many or the number of persons performing it. When these traits are present, we desire to follow the crowd. 2.1. Validity as we excuse others' conduct to make the right option. 2.2. Feasibility, we think we can do what others do. 2.3. Social acceptance because we desire to fit in. 3. Similarity, persuasion, when we observe similar people doing something, we tend to do it too. Errors. Look at all the people performing this unwanted thing is the worst social proof blunder. This message diminishes the original goal by adding, look at all the people who are doing it. The badly conveyed message becomes social proof and worsens matters. Another social proof mistake is lying about not having any for your idea, cause, or product. Use another principle of influence or trending support instead of social proof. Audiences expect changes to continue. Defense. We shouldn't blindly copy others' choices. Recognizing false social proof in these 2 instances can help you avoid complying. Sabotage. The social evidence has been poorly falsified. Looking up, natural mistake will provide snowballing social proof that pushes us to an inaccurate decision. Authority, deference. Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram studied authority conscience conflict. He observed many ordinary, grounded people eager to inflict suffering on others simply because an authoritative figure told them to. It illustrates that many people readily comply with authority. Authority, the power to order, decide, and compel. We're taught to obey authority and the law. Being around intellectual, wise, and powerful authoritative persons is usually advantageous. Unfortunately, many people adopt mental shortcuts of blindly obeying authority. Authorities. Professionals employ numerous symbols to persuade us without studying substance. Authority symbols include: titles are easy to adopt labels that indicate your occupation. Clothing, showing your job or status but can be faked with a costume. Trappings, your belongings that indicate social position or wealth. Research shows that high-status symbols compel obedience. Obedient people also misjudged how authority affected them. The study's authority persons had no further qualifications. Authoritative. Dr. Robert Cialdini writes in Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion that individuals see credentials and authority as either an authority or an authority. Being in charge frequently causes resistance and resentment when one gives directives. Authority, being well informed makes others more likely to follow your advice. To be trusted, you need two qualities. Expertise, knowledge of the topic. Trustworthiness, objectivity and honesty in knowledge delivery. Credibility, especially trustworthiness, takes time. Make yourself unavoidable to get expertise. Admitting your weaknesses early in a presentation builds trust. Defense. To defend yourself, you must immediately identify when authority orders are best followed and when they are not by assessing credibility with these questions. Expertise, is this authority an expert? This question shifts our attention from symbols to the authority's credentials and significance. How trustworthy is this expert? This inquiry helps us assess the authority's honesty outside their expertise. Note, compliance professionals may reveal some flaws to develop trust. If you think they're honest, their information will look more trustworthy. Chapter 6, Scarcity, the Few. Economics is about scarcity because unrestricted wants and limited resources lead to value differences. Scarcity, people appreciate scarce things and opportunities more. Less is best, loss worst. Compliance professionals employ these two scarcity tactics to sell us their products and services. Limited number, informing buyers that a certain product is in short quantity that cannot be guaranteed to last long. Some official time limit on the customer's opportunity to obtain what the compliance professional is offering is called a deadline. Thus, if we don't act now, the valued product will sell out or expire. These strategies encourage loss aversion. Loss aversion, the belief that people are more driven by the thought of losing an item of value than by the promise of gaining something of equal value. Mental reaction. Compliance experts use scarcity because people avoid losses. Two factors give scarcity power. 1. Mental shortcuts. Hard to get things are usually more valuable. Availability signifies quality. Loss aversion drives us to keep valuable things. 2. Psychological reaction. Fewer chances reduce freedom. Psychological reactance theory says we crave freedoms in their products and services more after losing them. Psychological reactance, especially at the terrible twos and in adolescence, explains many human behaviors. At these years, youngsters resist and feel independent, raising concerns about control, rights, and liberty. Information scarcity. Information today equals riches and power. Thus, if a communication is scarce, people want it more. These messages will also be better received. Before receiving a censored message, people may like it. Scarcity ideals. Dr. Robert Cialdini writes in Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion that the scarcity principle works best under two conditions. 1. New scarcity, we appreciate scarce things more than forbidden ones. 2. Competition, we are more prone to compete for scarce resources. Defense. Despite warnings, the scarcity principle is hard to defend against since emotion clouds our critical thinking. Use this two-step method to defend yourself. 1. Calm down and rationally interpret scarcity's emotional rush. 2. Consider why you desire it and the offer's suitability. Chapter 7, Commitment and Consistency, Mind Hobgoblins. In Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, Dr.